This is Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. I'm Star Sports Editor Ryan Finley, here with Greg Hansen. Greg, Nogales Little League is the biggest story in Tucson this week.
I'm not saying it's slow, but that's a good story.
It is a good story. They won the 50-70 Intermediate Little League World Series last night, trounced a team from Puerto Rico after starting a little slow. Brings some real notoriety to Nogales, obviously, puts them on the map, and obviously puts this team sort of in the pantheon of Tucson Little League greats. Greg, you have a nice knowledge of Tucson Little League history. You know, let's talk about the best Little League teams in Tucson history. Where do we start?
1972, the Tucson Little League team reached the championship game at Williamsport. Big time TV, ABC. Ed Vosberg, was their ace. Of course, they lost to the Taiwanese like 12-0, which was actually better than most teams had fared against Taiwan.
Was that back when Taiwan was fielding teams of 17 and 18-year-olds?
Right. Yeah, they had mustaches and beards. Ed Vosberg told me, and the Carry-On brothers have also told me the 73 Tucson Little League team was better than the 72 team, but they lost a heartbreaker in the finals to a California team to get to Williamsport. Then, of course, in 1986, my son played in the International Little League, which is over by Santa Rita High School. And they got to Williamsport in the final game, which was two Tucson teams, 14 years in the final game. Wow,
that's crazy. And that team had a name that you write about and that we read about a lot, Rich Barcelo, right?
Played 3 years on the PGA Tour. I remember watching, my son was 9 and Rich was 12, and they both had to play. My son had to bat against him. My son was this big, and Rich Barcelo was already like a man. I remember thinking, man, if they could pitch Rich Barcelo every game, they could get to the Little League World Series. And they got there.
When I was a kid, Aaron Harang, the guy that pitches for the Atlanta Braves now, was in my Little League. And I swear to God, he was 6'8" when he was 12.
Oh, yeah.
And you just sit there and you just have no chance.
Right.
You just try not to get hit.
Yeah, I mean, Teddy Ricks. In my lifetime, when I was 12, I faced this pitcher named Teddy Ricks, who was already, he seemed 20 to me, and I was 12. And I couldn't sleep at night thinking about batting against him the next day. And every time I go to my hometown now, driving in, he owns like a muffler shop, and it goes, Teddy Ricks Mufflers. I think of that every time, how many times he struck me out.
This is Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. Greg, you have obviously, you played a little baseball, and not just Little League, played in some men's leagues, played alongside Dick Tomey in a men's league, correct?
Dick Tomey, who will be here this weekend, speaking for the Coaches for Charity Classic, played in the City League. I think I played with him for about 8 years. In his mid to late 50s, he hit a double off of Jason Hockamy, who 2 weeks later was a third-round draft pick of the Cleveland Indians.
Right, pitched in the big leagues.
He struck out the first 9 batters. I led off the 4th, he struck me out again. Tomey then came up and gapped it off Jason Hockamy. I mean, my admiration for him as a football coach was already really good. Then it grew.
Wow. Everything you need to know about Dick Tomey, I think, you can learn in these stories about Dick Tomey playing baseball. One more thing before we go. Tell the folks, what position did he play?
He caught.
To me, that is so telling of what kind of a human being he was. He wanted to be in control. He didn't mind getting hurt. He didn't mind getting dirty. It's a thinking man's position catcher.
One game he got hit right here by a pitch against like a 20-year-old kid, a fireballer, and he got hit, and everybody on our team liked Dick so much, we were going to charge the mound and fight him, and he ran out and stopped us. He backed us down, and wouldn't let us escalate it.
Wow.
Kind of a guy he is.
Wow. Imagine if social media was around then, by the way.
That's right.
Some guy brushes Dick Tomey back, a fight breaks out.
He had the stitch marks here.
Really?
In our next game, like 3 days later.
That's awesome. Dick Tomey stories are like my favorite stories. Those are fantastic. That'll do it for this edition of Greg Hansen's Video Notebook, brought to you by Albertsons. Join us next time when we talk about U of A football. Training camp is going on and games are just around the corner. And don't forget to read everything about U of A football, Greg Hansen, Dick Tomey, and yes, even Little League on Tucson.com. For Greg Hansen, I'm Ryan Finley. We'll see you next time.